Hey everyone, BlackMarla is back with a fresh batch of chilling tales. Enjoy the video. Forgotten Sleigh. I shouldn't have gone into the woods alone. Not today. Not with the snow falling heavier than the forecast predicted. But I needed the quiet. The kind that only the forest could offer. A silence that wrapped around you like a blanket. At least that's what I told myself when I left the cabin, with my camera strapped to my neck, and my boots crunching through the fresh snow. The forest was still and beautiful. The world painted white. Snow-laden branches arched overhead, forming a cathedral of ice and frost. I should have stopped then, taken my pictures, and gone back to the warmth of the fireplace. But something pulled me deeper. That's when I saw it. The sleigh. It sat half buried in the snow, its red paint faded to a dull, almost bloodied hue. The runners were rusted, jagged in places, as if they'd been gnawed by time. A single bell dangled from one corner, the clapper long gone. For a moment, I thought it was part of some old logging equipment or a forgotten Christmas decoration from a nearby town. But it felt wrong. The air around it seemed colder, biting even through my gloves. My breath hung heavy in front of me, crystallizing faster than it should. I told myself it was nothing, just a trick of the cold. Still, I approached it. I crouched beside the sleigh, brushing snow from the seat. The wood was intact, smooth, though it looked like no one had touched it in years. My fingers hesitated before I laid them on the edge. The moment I did, I froze. A sound, soft at first, like the distant wail of the wind. But it wasn't the wind. It was voices, cries. Low and mournful, they drifted around me, threading through the trees. I yanked my hand back and stumbled to my feet. The sound stopped. Just the wind. I whispered, trying to convince myself. My voice sounded hollow, swallowed by the stillness. I backed away, my eyes fixed on the sleigh, but nothing moved. I turned and hurried back the way I came. The cries started that night. I woke to the sound of a child sobbing. My heart pounded as I sat up in bed, straining to hear over the crackling of the fire. At first I thought it was coming from outside, but then I realized it was inside my head, echoing in my ears, faint but unmistakable. "Help us," a voice whispered. I flung off the blankets and ran to the window. The snow was falling harder now, blanketing the world in white. No tracks, no movement, nothing. And yet, the voice came again. "Please, we're so cold." I pressed my hands to my ears, but it didn't stop. The cries grew louder, more desperate. By morning, I couldn't shake the sound. It followed me everywhere, threading through my thoughts, scratching at the edges of my sanity. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself I'd imagined it. The isolation was getting to me. That had to be it. But when I went into town, I heard it again. The cafe was warm and bustling with chatter, a stark contrast to the frost-bitten wilderness outside. I tried to focus on my tea, to lose myself in the mundane hum of human voices. But then in the faintest whisper, I heard, "Why did you leave us?" The tea spilled from my trembling hands. I looked around. No one else seemed to hear it. They laughed, gossiped, drank their coffee. Normalcy, while I spiraled. When I asked the owner, an old woman with kind eyes, about the woods, her expression darkened. "You shouldn't go there," she said. "Not where the sleigh is." I didn't ask how she knew. I didn't want to know. But she told me anyway. It belonged to a group heading to the Christmas fair, long before the war. A storm hit, and they lost their way. They froze to death out there, waiting for someone to save them. People say the sleigh stayed behind, but the passengers, they didn't. Not entirely. I left without finishing my tea. I don't remember deciding to go back to the sleigh. It was like my body acted on its own, pulled by invisible strings. By the time I reached the woods, the sun was already dipping behind the trees, casting long shadows that clawed at the snow. The sleigh was waiting for me, exactly where I'd found it. The cries were louder now, no longer faint whispers, but full-throated wails that made my chest tighten. The bell swung lightly, though no wind stirred. "Please," the voices begged, "save us. Don't leave us again." Tears pricked my eyes. My hands shook as I climbed onto the seat. I didn't want to, I swear I didn't, but it was as if I had no choice. The moment I sat down, the air around me shifted. The forest dissolved into a blinding white void. Snow whipped around me, stinging my face and hands. The sleigh moved, pulled by invisible forces hurtling through the storm. The passengers appeared then, ghostly figures draped in frost. Their faces were hollow, their eyes pleading. Children clung to their parents, their lips blue with cold. "Faster!" they screamed. "Save us!" I tried to stop the sleigh, to jump off, but my hands were frozen to the reins. The cries grew louder, more frantic until they were all I could hear. And then, silence.